Howdy, welcome back to the Addicted Motors YouTube channel. My name is Troy, and today we're going to talk about Disco 2s, Land Rover Discovery 2s. Now, I realize I've probably covered a bit of this topic in multiple other videos, but I want to kind of bring it all together. And I've done a few videos in a series that I've kind of titled, so you're thinking about buying a L322, an LR3, a D1, a Range Rover Classic, and a couple other trucks, but I don't think I've ever really discussed the D2, and I've got one sitting in my driveway that's for sale, so let's talk about it. So D2s, now they've always been, if you've owned one, they've always been kind of a gem. As far as if you're a D2 owner, you've got to stick to your guns because there's usually a lot of negativity surrounding a D2, or there was, and they weren't really looked fondly upon when it came to classic owners or D1 owners. The D2 was, I'm not gonna say it was the black sheep, but they were just kind of passed over because they kind of landed in the middle between the D1 and the LR3. But I think the automotive community's come around to them in the past few years. D2s used to be much cheaper. They used to be just, labeled as a do not touch. I remember when I was growing up detailing cars, I named two cars that I thought to myself I'd never buy. One was a D2 and one was an XJS Jag. Both of them I kind of covet now, which, that's kind of how life works. But let's jump into the D2-ness as a whole, right? So D2s, I'm not going to bore you with the history because I'm not going to read off the Wikipedia page, but from what I know, D2s started in 1998, 99 in the US. They're kind of built alongside and sold alongside the late model D1. So there's 99 D1s, there's 99 D2s. The D1s had a 4-liter at the time. This also had a 4-liter with the option of a 4.6. They made a Westminster, they made a few other higher trim options, just like the P38 4-liter or 4.6. I prefer, now if you're looking watching this video to potentially buy one, I prefer the 4-liter. A little bit less issues, a little bit less bored out. It's just, I think it's a little bit less power, but you don't really notice it anyway. Now, they were made all the way up until 2004. Now, the early ones, the 99 and some 2000s, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong. So the 99, you could get with the manual locking center diff. So instead of the low, neutral, high center actuator, which this is a 2000, so it does not have a manually locking center diff. It relies on traction control. Now this one, a 2000 and 2001, I believe still has the locking transfer case that you can manually actuate the center locker. Not the same in the 02s, in the 03s, and then in 2004, they actually brought back the manually locking center differential. So if you're looking to do any type of off-roading or use this as an off-road vehicle or want to be able to actuate your center diff, look at a 99 or a very early 2000, because you can it'll either be equipped with it or you can modify it as such. You can stick, something down there, a wrench, a head, a socket. It's like a 13 millimeter, and you can just manually do it or just reach under the truck and do it. But again, the one you kind of want is, and most of them are 4.6, a 2004. Has updated plastic headlights. It's a bit of a facelift. They're a little bit more desirable, or not. I personally prefer the square headlight version and the look of the older one. So let's talk about aesthetics real quick. And I think it's a handsome looking truck. I think a lot of people saw these when they were kids and always just looked upon them fondly. And I think that brings back a lot of nostalgic memories, which is why they're becoming more and more desirable in today's market. They also, again, they look good. They still have the high roof. The D2 is a little bit longer than the D1s. You've got a little bit more cargo room back there. It feels a little bit more modern on the inside. It rides a little quieter. There's a little bit more amenities. You've got the captain's seats on the inside, and it's kind of a slightly upscale or more upscale total package than you got with the D1, which is most people find attractive. And so where a D1 falls perfectly, right? You like cars, you like trucks, you've got kids, you want something interesting, a little more modern but fun and slightly eclectic. That's kind of where the D2 comes into perfectly. You don't have the air suspension. Most of them have self-leveling rear suspension. We don't have full air suspension like you do in an L322 or an LR3. It's body on frame, it has the look, you can put car seats in, it has most of the safety amenities, and I guess modern feel. It's not modern, but it feels a little bit more modern, a little more usable in that sense. So if you were looking to kind of bridge that gap between fun, boxy 80s off-roader, but you kind of want a couple airbags and a keyless entry and high beams and a heated windshield and kind of some things that make it more interesting, then all of a sudden the D2 becomes a lot more interesting. So let's say you want to buy one, right? Here's where it gets interesting, because yes, they're still cheap. You can find them from $1,000 all the way up to $24,000. I haven't seen them at $30,000 yet, unless they've been completely restored, but they're getting there. There's a few for sale that have very low miles, but they're modified, but the modifieds don't always equal price. Okay, when you buy one of these, you want to look at the service history. You want to look at the ownership. You really want to check it for rust, and we'll get into that in a little bit, because that is the Achilles heels of one of these trucks. They'll go for over 200,000 miles, no problem, as long as you do the maintenance and you watch the overheating, which again, it only really overheats unless there's something wrong with it because of preventative maintenance. So you see these trucks with, 50 to 70, 170,000 miles, no problems. Someone asks, oh, this particular one's had a bunch of engine work to it. How much longer can I expect it to last? It has 99,000 miles or 97,000 miles. That's inevitable. I mean, as long as you keep up with it, that engine, after it's been resealed, and what could go possibly another 100,000 miles. But most importantly, if you're gonna go look at one, let's talk about the first things you want to check. We're gonna start right here in the back, and we're gonna look under here, and this will be the first thing you check. The rear frame section, you wanna check that for rust. You wanna look at both sides, either side, and this one, obviously, I just washed the truck, so it looks impeccable. There's no rust. It's absolutely perfect, as well as the rest of the underside. So this is not a good example of a truck if you wanna do some comparisons, because this is how you wanna see it, not how you don't wanna see it. You definitely wanna look under there. Usually the front ends look great because they've had oil leaks and whatnot, and this one is not leaky, but it just looks and is very clean. So once you check rust, you know that it's probably worth the investment if it's a deal. If it's not rusty, that means you can keep it long term, and you don't have to worry about the structural issues that come along with having a rusty chassis or not passing inspection, MOT, whatever you have in your county or whatnot. So that's number one. So the second thing you have to think about is, what are you going to use this for? Can you use this as your daily driver? Yes. Should you? Sure. Do you work from home? Yes, no. I mean, do you commute every day? Do you care about gas mileage? Gas mileage isn't great. Gas mileage is probably between 13 and maybe 18 on a highway. This one's bone stock with stock tires, no lift, so it probably does okay. But RPMs cruising on the highway, they're usually around 70 or 80, below $3,000. So, the little engine has power, it's ample, it's nice, but you're spinning it, and this is not going to be great on fuel. All right, so your frame looks good. Next thing you want to check is under the floors, around this area, and just to ensure there's no rust or anything under there. It is in your best interest to pull these panels, just a couple screws, pull them out and assess to make sure there's no rust in the floors, and that goes on either side. But that's getting a little bit into the weeds. If the frame isn't rusty, usually it's up here is okay, unless it's leaking, because these things do leak. They leak from the sunroof seals on both sides. You want to check and make sure the headliner is in good shape. This one's a little saggy, but it's not stained or anything, and usually if it is leaking, it might even leak from here, and there'll be water drips down here and water drips in the back. So something to think about. Let's look under the hood. Now, this particular truck has had thousands of dollars of recent maintenance to the engine. I don't even know how much it cost, because it had new valve cover gaskets, new belts, spark plugs, tune-up, everything that you would want to do to keep the truck going long term. It looks like it's got new cooling bits, a new air filter, oil change, everything in there. I mean, this is pretty amazing as far as the condition of the engine. You see the exhaust manifold bolts are accessible, they're not rusted off. All these little things that just make you feel confident about it. This one's also equipped with ACE, so that seems to be functioning, not leaking. The truck feels good. ACE is a system that it's a little bit of like a hydraulically actuated struts, or I forget what it's connected to, but basically it helps it ride a little smoother and keeps it stiff around the turns, which actually does feel great, and you can really feel it in action. But again, make sure everything sounds right. It's not making any crazy ticking noises on startup. It's not clattering. These trucks are liable to have slipped liners sometimes. So there's a lot of engine things that could make issues worse. Also, these trucks have it's a GEMS engine, I believe, so it's got your coil packs and stuff stuffed in the back there. So that's a pain in the butt. So if you have a misfire, or a check engine light for a misfire, it's going to take a little bit more labor and a little more time to diag and go through than your standard coil equipped D1 or 3.9 or something like that. Just makes it a little bit more labor intensive to do certain things. Let's just start it up. All right, so no lights on the dash, which is very uncommon for these trucks. Usually there's the three amigos, which in itself is not that bad, right? Could just be a brake a sensor, a speed sensor or something like that that's become loose from off-roading or just never been cleaned or dirty. Usually not that big of a deal. Three amigos shouldn't intimidate you. A blinking check engine light or a check engine light in general that is signaling a misfire is something that could be an issue. It could be an issue of some type of head gasket, misfire, cylinder, blah, blah, blah. So that is more worrisome to me than it would be for a D1. All right, listen to it purr. Absolutely no other noises than I think that it should be making. I think that's a good baseline if you want to listen to see what your engine sounds like in comparison. Now let's run through the interior real quick. Usually a lot of wear on the doors here. You want to make sure the windows work, the seats work, not, they are electrically actuated, so if they're in a position, they're kind of stuck. If you're a taller guy, you'll have headroom, but your knees will usually contact the bottom of the steering wheel. I've never really liked how this functions or how this feels. Also, the door release on this side is kind of hard to get to over when the door is closed open. Another thing is the keys. These keys are brittle and they break if you actuate it like a normal key. You have to kind of be careful with it and remove it with a little more caution and finesse than you would another key, or else that will just break off. Here's the dash, a lot of good features. The AC systems are, usually robust to the point where they work. Radios usually work as well. They're not as code centric as the D1s, and everything else in here is good. I have this removed because I'm getting it redone. You want to make sure that nothing's blinking here. Again, I had it in S mode, sport mode, snow, what it is. Just pulls out your ratios a little bit. Want to make sure that functions and nothing's blinking, that it goes through all four gears, and it's not having any issues. But again, this is a very clean example. The rear hatch opens, it's not stuck, all the seats work, the windows work. So even the sunroofs open and close. All right, the next thing you want to do is try the transfer case, make sure that works, shift into neutral. We're in high right now, go into N and then get it into low. Make sure you might even have a little bit of roll to actuate, 0 to 5 mile an hour. Put it into drive, and we are in low, and it shifts through the gears in low as well. Again, I think that's pretty important to make sure that that works. And it goes back out, let's see. All right, once you're in low, you have to get out of low and make sure that that actuates. So the truck has to kind of be moving in a D2 with a non-manual actuated transfer case, which is interesting and something that you might not realize if you're just jumping in the truck and doing it at a standstill, and you might think there's an issue. All right, let's take it for a quick spin, make sure everything is working. Shifts through all the gears. These ZF transmissions are pretty smooth. I don't even feel it shift. The steering should actually feel pretty tight. I know it's a truck. If it has stock tires and it's not been beat to hell, the steering actually should be pretty direct, and there shouldn't be any major clunks or knocks. You don't want to put it from neutral into drive and drive into neutral. Make sure those drive shafts don't have a whole lot of play or anything like that. But other than that, it's most of them drive okay, unless it's been completely ragged on. And a few other things that I mentioned before: check the oil, check the coolant, make sure it's the right coolant color, make sure it doesn't smell like coolant, there's no obvious leaks. A lot of these systems aren't bled properly, and a lot of them do have overheating issues or slip liners or whatnot. But usually after the first startup of a car and you drive it for a little bit, you let it warm up, you can tell whether or not there's something going wrong. You don't just want to jump in and go. You can't really trust a truck if it's been sitting for too long. Usually they're okay, but those kind of issues just don't fix themselves. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope you got something out of it and at least saw at least the upsides of what a properly sorted D2 looks like. This is probably not gonna be here for much longer. I've got a few interested buyers, so it might go local. But if you're interested in any other Land Rovers or want my opinions on things, feel free to check out the rest of the channel and subscribe. I've got hundreds and hundreds of videos at this point. So if that's something you're interested in, please check it out. Thanks, and catch you in the next video.